We are diving straight into the front matter of a massive 19th century esoteric artifact today. It's a book that literally claimed to hold the answers to the universe. But as you'll see, right behind its imposing cover lies an absolute rollercoaster of editorial chaos, historical mystery, and wild philosophical ambition. To tackle this daunting text, we're going to break it down into four main parts. First, the synthesis of knowledge. Second, a chaotic compilation. Third, mapping the occult landscape. And finally, the paradoxical age. All right, let's kick things off with part one, the synthesis of knowledge, examining the artifact itself. Before we even get into the deep ideas, just look at this physical book. It has quite a story to tell. Right in the middle of the title page for Volume 3 of The Secret Doctrine by H.P. Blavatsky, there is this incredibly ambitious subtitle, The Synthesis of Science, Religion, and Philosophy. I mean, think about the sheer confidence it takes to publish a book claiming to unite all three of those historically clashing domains. It completely sets the stage for a work of unbelievable scale. And you know, this wasn't just some theoretical text floating out there in the ether. That Dr. Sircar's library stamp you see? It grounds us right back in reality. It's a great reminder that over a century ago, this dense material was physically passing through real hands, being cataloged and intensely studied in private collections. And demand for this wasn't just a flash in the pan either. We're looking at a clear timeline of its enduring popularity. Initially published in 1897, it was then reprinted in 1910, again in 1913, and yet again in 1918. Despite how incredibly dense and, frankly, challenging this material is, there was this persistent, decades-long thirst for Blavatsky's ideas. People were actively seeking out this synthesis of knowledge. Moving right along to part two, a chaotic compilation and the editor's confession. So that highly polished title page we just talked about, it actually hides a really messy reality, which is revealed through an incredibly candid preface by the editor, Annie Besant. H.P. Blavatsky actually passed away before this third volume could be published, which left Besant to assemble these scattered notes into a cohesive book. And reading her preface, wow, you quickly realize this was nothing short of an editorial nightmare. Just listen to this quote directly from her preface. She says, "The papers given to me by HPB were quite unarranged and had no obvious order." So the grand authoritative synthesis we saw promised on the title page, it was actually pieced together from a staggering, chaotic pile of unsorted papers. Besant literally had to build the structure we are looking at today from scratch. And honestly, it gets even wilder. On the very next page of the preface, Besant writes this about the author's work. She makes, possibly deliberately, many statements so confused that they are mere blinds. I mean, that is astonishing. The editor is straight up warning the reader that the author might have intentionally included errors, overlaps, and confusing statements as deliberate blinds to obscure the truth from the uninitiated. It adds this incredible layer of mystery to navigating the text. You aren't just reading a book anymore. You're trying to solve a puzzle that the author intentionally rigged. Which brings us to part three, mapping the occult landscape, diving into the table of contents. So, what exactly was in these chaotic, intentionally confusing papers? Well, the table of contents alone spans multiple pages and encompasses a staggering 51 distinct sections. It's just a sprawling, completely overwhelming map of the occult. Now, rather than bogging you down by reading a massive index out loud, I've synthesized those 51 sections into a few broad thematic buckets for us. First, you have ancient beliefs, covering everything from Chaldean oracles to Egyptian magic. Then, deep dives into religious figures, comparing Jesus, Apollonius, and Buddha. And finally, you have these massive cosmic mysteries, exploring huge concepts like the sun as God and primordial matter. The sheer scale of Blavatsky's ambition becomes super apparent when you look at it this way. And the text aggressively connects all these diverse traditions. It'll leap directly from a deep dive into Egyptian magic, discussing papyri and magical statues, straight over to the mysteries of ancient Europe, exploring Orpheus and early Christianity. It's all connected in her view. But the geographical sweep doesn't stop there. The text dives deeply into Eastern philosophical themes, zeroing in on the mystery of Buddha and reincarnation, before shifting heavily toward Buddhism in Tibet, discussing mysterious lands and trying to correct Western misconceptions. The book is literally globe-trotting through human spirituality, trying to tie the whole shebang into one master theory. Let's move to our final section, Part 4, The Paradoxical Age and Blavatsky's Core Philosophy.
So why go through all this incredible effort to map global occult traditions? To answer that, we have to look at the introductory text. Here, the book launches a really sharp critique of the late 19th century society in which it was published, boldly declaring their modern era to be a paradoxical anomaly.
And the core of this paradox, according to the text, is that society is hopelessly torn between two completely parallel, unyielding lines. On one side, you have orthodox science, which it calls preeminently materialistic. And on the other side, you have orthodox theology, described as preeminently pietistic. These are twin forces. They're bitterly opposed, culturally dominant, and completely unable to speak to one another. The author essentially saw a society totally fractured by rigid scientific materialism on one hand and dogmatic religious piety on the other, which brilliantly illustrates the entire purpose of the secret doctrine. The text proposes drawing what it calls a third line. This third line is the ancient wisdom religion, that esoteric knowledge hidden in all those global traditions we saw earlier in the table of contents. The book argues that this ancient wisdom acts as a hyphen of reconciliation between science and religion. By uncovering the shared mystical roots of both the physical universe and human spirituality, the text claims we can finally bridge the gap between hard science and deep theology.
Which leaves us with a pretty fascinating question to ponder. This book was a massive, chaotic, incredibly ambitious attempt to solve a cultural crisis back in 1897. But, well, look at our world today. Are we any less fractured? Is modern society actually any more prepared to reconcile science, religion, and philosophy today than it was over a century ago? It's a really provocative thought, and I think it shows exactly why digging into these historical artifacts in this explainer is just so rewarding. Keep questioning the world around you.